I was invisible. Not metaphorically, not poetically. I mean truly, genuinely invisible to the world around me. 26 years old, hands permanently wrinkled from industrial soap and scalding water, hair always tied back in a grease-stained bandana, smelling like yesterday's seafood and this morning's burnt toast. I was Natalie Chen, professional ghost haunting the back rooms of Boston's restaurant scene. The kitchen at Giuseppe's wasn't glamorous. It was a sweatbox where dreams went to drown in 50-gallon sinks filled with congealed pasta sauce and the fossilized remains of someone's carbonara fantasy. I'd been washing dishes there for 3 years. 3 years of my culinary degree gathering dust while I scrubbed other people's messes for $11 an hour. Nobody looked at me. Not the line cooks who shouted in Italian and threw pans. Not the servers who breezed through with their practiced smiles and pockets full of tips I'd never see. Not the customers who sent back their overpriced mediocrity, completely unaware that the same hands washing their plates had once won a scholarship to the Cambridge School of Culinary Arts. That scholarship felt like a lifetime ago. My father needed money. His medical bills after the accident weren't going to pay themselves. My mother was long gone, died when I was 11, leaving behind nothing but faded photographs and a recipe book I couldn't bear to open. So I dropped out, picked up a dish brush, and disappeared into the steam and noise. Every night followed the same pattern. Clock in at 4, drown in dishes until midnight. Clock out, walk home through streets that didn't register my existence. Sleep, repeat, until the night everything changed. It was a Tuesday in October, the kind of crisp autumn evening where Boston tries to convince you it's romantic instead of just cold. Giuseppe's was slammed. Some food critic had written a review, and suddenly everyone wanted to pretend our mediocre bolognese was worth a 2-hour wait. I was elbow deep in my 4th rack of wine glasses when Antonio, the floor manager, burst into the dish pit. Antonio never came back here. The dish pit was beneath him, populated by people like me who didn't matter. "You," he said, pointing at me with a manicured finger that had never touched dishwater. "You can cook, yeah? You went to cooking school?" I stared at him, water dripping from my yellow rubber gloves. What? "The new sous chef quit. Just walked out mid-service. Chef is having a breakdown. You went to culinary school, I saw it on your application. Get out there." My heart hammered. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, praying for, scrubbing dishes for. A chance. Finally, a chance. I ripped off my gloves and apron, following Antonio to the line. The kitchen was chaos. Shouting, smoke, pans clanging like warfare. Head chef Marco looked at me like I was a cockroach that had crawled out of the garbage disposal. "You're the dishwasher?" he sneered in his thick Italian accent. "I'm trained," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can help." He laughed, actually laughed. "Get back to your sink, sweetheart. I need a cook, not someone who plays in dirty water." The humiliation burned hotter than any stove. Antonio wouldn't even look at me as he ushered me back to my corner of shame. As I returned to my dishes, something inside me cracked. Not broke, just cracked. A hairline fracture in whatever hope I'd been clinging to. I finished my shift in numb silence. At midnight, I clocked out, grabbed my backpack from the moldy employee locker, and stepped into the October night. That's when I felt it. Eyes. Someone watching. I turned, scanning the street. Giuseppe's was in the North End, a maze of narrow streets and Italian restaurants where tourists stumbled and locals knew every alley. A black car was parked across the street. Expensive, sleek, completely out of place in this neighborhood. I couldn't see through the tinted windows, but I felt the weight of someone's gaze. A chill ran down my spine. I walked faster. The car followed. My pace quickened to nearly a run. I took a sharp left down an alley I knew led to a busier street. The car couldn't follow down the narrow path. I heard it accelerate, probably circling to cut me off. My breath came in short gasps. Why would anyone follow me? I had nothing. I was nothing. I burst onto Hanover Street, where a few late-night cafes still glowed warm. Safety and visibility. I ducked into a 24-hour convenience store, pretending to browse energy drinks while watching the street through the dirty window. The black car glided past slowly, then disappeared around a corner. I waited 20 minutes before leaving, taking a completely different route home. My apartment was a studio in Charlestown, not the gentrified part with the Navy Yard condos, but the part where sirens sang you to sleep and the elevator had been broken for 6 months. I climbed 4 flights of stairs, hands shaking as I unlocked 3 deadbolts. Inside, I pressed my back against the door, heart still racing. You're paranoid, I told myself. Nobody cares about you enough to follow you. But sleep didn't come easy that night. The next 3 weeks passed in a fog of déjà vu. Work, home, sleep. Work, home, sleep. But the feeling of being watched never quite left. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of that black car on my street. Sometimes I'd feel eyes on me at the bus stop. Once, I could have sworn I saw someone in an expensive coat standing across from Giuseppe's, just watching the kitchen window. I told myself I was losing it. Stress, exhaustion, the slow death of giving up on your dreams. Then came the night that shattered my invisibility forever. It was a Friday in early November. Giuseppe's was busy but manageable. I was in my usual position at the industrial sink, working through the dinner rush debris, when I heard shouting from the dining room. Not the usual kitchen chaos. Something different. Angrier. Dangerous. Antonio appeared in the doorway, face pale. Everyone stay in the kitchen. Don't come out. Of course, everyone immediately craned their necks to see what was happening. Through the small window in the kitchen door, I could see a man standing in the center of the dining room. He was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled fury. Even from a distance, even through a greasy window, I could feel the power radiating from him. He wasn't yelling. That was somehow worse. He spoke in a low, measured tone that made the restaurant manager literally take a step backward. 2 other men flanked him, built like refrigerators, hands casually resting near their jackets in a way that screamed concealed weapons. I don't care about your health code violations, the man in the suit said, his voice carrying despite its quietness. I don't care about your cousin who knows someone who knows someone. You owe Carlo Benedetti $50,000. You have until Monday to pay, or this restaurant becomes a smoking crater in the North End. Do I make myself clear? My blood turned to ice. Carlo Benedetti. I'd heard that name whispered in the North End my whole life. The Benedetti family wasn't just connected to the Boston mob, they practically ran it. And this man, this terrifying presence in a beautiful suit, was clearly one of their enforcers. The restaurant manager stammered something. The enforcer tilted his head, then his eyes swept the restaurant and landed directly on the kitchen window, directly on me. I should have looked away. Every survival instinct screamed at me to duck, to hide, to return to my beloved invisibility. But I couldn't. His eyes, dark, intense, absolutely predatory, pinned me in place like a butterfly on a collector's board. For 3 heartbeats, we stared at each other through that greasy window. Then he smiled. Not friendly, not warm. The smile of a wolf spotting something interesting in the forest. He said something to one of his men, gestured toward the kitchen, and then they left. Just walked out like they hadn't just threatened to burn down the restaurant. I stood frozen at my sink, hands trembling in the dishwater. Antonio came back into the kitchen, looking like he'd aged 10 years. Get back to work, he muttered. All of you. And nobody talks about what just happened. Nobody. I returned to my dishes on autopilot, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted in my invisible little world. That man had seen me. Really seen me. and somehow, I knew my life would never be the same. I didn't see the man in the suit again, but the black car became a constant presence. Every day, parked somewhere on my route. Outside Giuseppe's, near my bus stop. Once, right across from my apartment building at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep and looked out the window. I should have been terrified. I was terrified. But there was something else too. A strange curiosity that made no sense. Who was he? Why was he watching me? What could a mobster possibly want with an invisible dishwasher? 3 weeks after the restaurant incident, it happened. I was walking home on a Thursday night, taking my usual route through the less traveled streets, because the main roads were full of drunk college students. The November air was bitter, biting through my thin jacket. I kept my head down, hands shoved in my pockets, trying to become even smaller than usual. Natalie Chen. I froze. The voice came from behind me, deep, smooth, with an edge that suggested violence was always just one word away. I turned slowly. The man from the restaurant stood 5 feet away, hands casually in the pockets of his perfectly tailored coat. Up close, he was even more devastating. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything about me in seconds. A small scar above his left eyebrow that somehow made him more attractive instead of less. How do you know my name? My voice came out steadier than I expected. I know a lot of things about you, Natalie. He took a step closer. I took a step back. I know you graduated top of your class at Cambridge Culinary. I know you dropped out 3 years ago to take care of your father. I know you're wasting your talent washing dishes at Giuseppe's for poverty wages. I know you take the bus home every night because you can't afford a car. I know you eat instant ramen 4 nights a week and skip dinner the other 3 to send money to your father's care facility. Each fact landed like a physical blow. He'd been watching me. Not just watching, investigating, stalking. Who are you? I demanded, trying to mask my fear with anger. Dante Benedetti. He said it simply, like he was just anyone, like his family name didn't make grown men wet themselves. And I have a proposition for you. I'm opening a restaurant. He cut me off with the casual authority of someone who'd never been told no. High-end Italian cuisine. Not the tourist trap garbage Giuseppe serves. Real food. The kind that makes people weep into their pasta. I need a head chef. Someone with talent, training, and something to prove. You need money for your father's medical bills and a way out of that dish pit. We can help each other. I stared at him, mind reeling. This had to be a trap. Men like Dante Benedetti didn't offer opportunities. They set snares. Why me? I asked. There are hundreds of trained chefs in Boston. Why a dishwasher? His expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering across his features. Because I've watched you for 3 months. I've seen you study the line cook's techniques when you think no one's looking. I've seen you correct their mistakes in your head. Last week, Marco burned a risotto. I saw you wince like someone had kicked a puppy. You care about the food even though no one cares about you. That's rare. The words should have felt like a compliment. Instead, they felt like exposure. Like someone had peeled back my skin and examined my secrets. I need to think about it, I said. No. One word, flat and final. You decide now. I'll pay you $80,000 a year to start, plus full benefits and a signing bonus to cover 6 months of your father's care. The restaurant opens in 3 months. You'll have complete creative control over the menu, budget for the finest ingredients, and a staff that actually respects talent. Or you can go back to your dish pit and your ramen and watch your father's condition deteriorate because you can't afford the good facility. It wasn't a choice. It was blackmail dressed up as opportunity. He knew exactly where to press. Exactly what I couldn't refuse. Why? I asked again, quieter this time. What do you really want from me? Dante stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Maybe I just believe in second chances," he said softly. "Or maybe I have my reasons. Does it matter? You get what you want. I get what I want. Everyone wins." "Men like you don't give away anything for free," I said. "There's always a cost." His smile was dangerous. "Clever girl. Yes, there's a cost. The cost is excellence. You work for me. You give me everything. Your talent, your time, your creativity. You make my restaurant the best in Boston, and in return, I make you someone people finally see. Deal?" Every rational thought screamed no. This man was dangerous. He was connected to organized crime. He'd been stalking me for months. Nothing good could come from accepting his offer. But rational thought doesn't pay for your father's medication. Rational thought doesn't pull you out of the dish pit. Rational thought doesn't feed the hunger, not for food, but for purpose, for recognition, for mattering. "Deal," I whispered. Dante's smile widened. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and showed me the screen. It was a bank transfer confirmation. $20,000, sent to my father's care facility, covering the next 6 months in full. "I don't waste time," he said. "You start Monday. Be at this address at 7 a.m. sharp." He handed me a business card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. An address in the Seaport District, the most expensive real estate in Boston. "Monday?" I choked. "I haven't even given Giuseppe's notice. Already done. I bought out your employment contract an hour ago. You're free." The casual display of power should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a sick thrill. This man could reshape my world with a phone call. What else could he do? "What do I wear?" The question was stupid, but my brain was short-circuiting. "Whatever you want. You're the head chef now, Natalie, not the dishwasher. Start acting like it." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Natalie, don't research me. Don't ask questions about my family or my business. Don't try to understand why I chose you. Just cook, make beautiful food. That's all I need from you." The lie was so obvious it insulted my intelligence. But I nodded anyway. Dante walked away, disappearing into the black car that had haunted my life for months. I stood on that cold street corner, business card burning in my hand, and wondered what I'd just agreed to. When I got home that night, I did exactly what he'd told me not to do. I researched him. Dante Benedetti, 32 years old, rumored to be the heir apparent to the Benedetti crime family. His father, Carlo Benedetti, was the current Don, aging, ruthless, and paranoid. Dante had a reputation as the family's problem solver, smart, calculating, and absolutely without mercy when crossed. But there were gaps in his history. A missing year when he was 17, whispers about a tragedy involving his mother. The articles were vague, details scrubbed or buried. Sarah Benedetti, dead at 41, 15 years ago. Cause of death, never publicly disclosed. I dug deeper, falling down a rabbit hole of old newspaper archives and crime blogs. And then I found it. A small notation in an investigative piece about mob-related deaths. Sarah Benedetti's death was ruled accidental, but there had been an investigation. A man questioned but never charged. My blood turned to ice as I read the name. Marcus Chen. My father. The room spun. I reread the article 3 times, each word hammering into my skull like nails. My father had been investigated in connection with the death of Dante Benedetti's mother. The article was vague. No charges filed. No evidence of wrongdoing. Case closed. But the implication hung there like a noose. 15 years ago. I was 11. My mother had just died. My father was working as a security consultant for various businesses in Boston. Legitimate work, or so I'd always believed. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and called the care facility where my father lived. He'd had a stroke 2 years ago, leaving him partially paralyzed and with significant memory problems. Our conversations were difficult, but I needed answers. "Dad," I said, when they connected me to his room, "I need to ask you about something. About 15 years ago. Do you remember working for anyone named Benedetti?" Silence. Long enough that I thought the connection had dropped. "Dad? Don't." His voice was rough, frightened. "Don't say that name, Natalie, please." "Dad, what happened? What did you do?" "I didn't—" He stopped, breathing heavily. "It was an accident. I swear to you, baby girl. It was an accident. I was just security. I wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't—" The line went dead. I called back 3 times, but the nurse said he'd become agitated and they'd had to sedate him. I sat in my dark apartment, pieces of a puzzle clicking together. Dante hadn't chosen me randomly. This wasn't about my talent or my potential. This was about my father, about Sarah Benedetti, about something that happened 15 years ago when I was just a child. I'd thought I was invisible, but I'd been visible to Dante Benedetti all along. Not as Natalie the chef, but as Natalie the daughter of the man who'd somehow been involved in his mother's death. The question that kept me awake all night. Was this opportunity really about giving me a second chance? Or was it about revenge? Monday morning couldn't come fast enough, and yet I dreaded it with every fiber of my being. I needed to look Dante in the eye and demand the truth. I needed to know what game I'd agreed to play, and whether I was the player or the pawn. The Seaport address led me to a building I'd only ever seen from a distance, all glass and steel, and the kind of modern architecture that screamed money. The restaurant space was on the ground floor, a massive open concept with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Even unfinished, it was breathtaking. I arrived at 6:45, too nervous to be late. The door was unlocked. Inside, construction was clearly wrapping up. Gleaming stainless steel equipment, custom woodwork, a wine cellar visible through glass walls. This wasn't a restaurant. It was a cathedral dedicated to food. "You're early." Dante's voice came from behind me. I spun around. He looked different in the morning light, less terrifying, more human. He wore dark jeans and a black button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The first 2 buttons were undone, showing a hint of his collarbone and a gold chain that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. His hair was slightly less perfect, like he'd run his hands through it. It made him look younger, almost vulnerable. Almost. "We need to talk," I said, forcing my voice steady. "About my father. About your mother. About the real reason I'm here." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, that I'd figured it out so quickly. Or respect. With Dante, it was impossible to tell. I wondered how long it would take you. He walked past me toward the kitchen, expecting me to follow. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Don't patronize me." I stayed rooted in place. "Tell me the truth. Is this about revenge? Are you using me to get to my father?" Dante turned, leaning against one of the prep stations with infuriating casualness. "Honestly, I don't know yet." The admission shocked me more than a lie would have. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said slowly, "that when I started watching you 3 months ago, yes, it was because of your father. I wanted to understand the daughter of the man who killed my mother. I wanted to see what kind of person you were, whether you knew what he'd done, whether you were complicit somehow." Each word landed like a physical blow. "My father didn't kill anyone. The case was closed. No charges, because my family made sure there were no charges." His voice turned cold, sharp as a knife. My father, Carlo, he handled it, made the investigation disappear. But I was 17, Natalie. I was there that night. I know what happened. Then tell me. My hands clenched into fists. Tell me what you think my father did. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled. The kind of control that came from years of practice holding back rage. My mother was leaving my father. She'd discovered the full extent of his business dealings, not just the legitimate fronts, but everything. The violence, the extortion, the bodies. She was going to take me and disappear, start over somewhere far from Boston and the Benedetti name. He paused, pain flickering across his face. She'd made arrangements with a security consultant to help us vanish, someone outside my father's network who could be trusted. That consultant was your father. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. No, that's not. My father worked legitimate security jobs. He did. And my mother hired him because of that legitimacy. He was supposed to meet us at a safe house in Quincy. We were supposed to leave that night. Midnight, December 15th, 15 years ago. Dante's voice cracked, just slightly. She never made it. Someone told my father about the plan. Someone gave him the address of the safe house. When I got there with my mother, my father's men were waiting. I couldn't breathe. What happened? They tried to force her into a car. She fought. There was a gun. It went off. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw the 17-year-old boy who'd watched his mother die. Your father was there. He was supposed to protect us, but he just stood there. Did nothing. And when it was over, my father paid him to disappear. To forget he'd ever met Sarah Benedetti. Tears burned in my eyes. I don't believe you. My father wouldn't. He couldn't. Couldn't he? Dante pushed off the prep station, moving toward me with predatory grace. Call him right now. Ask him about Sarah Benedetti. Ask him about December 15th. Ask him about the money my father paid him to keep quiet about a woman's death. I wanted to defend my father. I wanted to scream that Dante was lying, that this was manipulation, that my father was a good man who'd never hurt anyone. But I remembered last night's phone call, the fear in his voice, the way he'd told me not to say the Benedetti name. Why? My voice broke. If you blame my father, if you think he's responsible, why offer me this job? Why help me? Dante stopped inches from me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to see the scar above his eyebrow up close, thin, precise, like a knife wound. Because, he said quietly, I spent 3 months watching you, planning to destroy your life the way your father destroyed mine. I was going to offer you this opportunity, make you dependent on me, and then take it all away. I was going to make you feel what I felt. Hope, followed by crushing loss. So why didn't you? I whispered. Because I watched you actually work. I watched you care about food with the kind of passion my mother had. She was a chef, did you know that? Before she married my father, before the Benedetti family consumed her life, she had a tiny restaurant in the North End. Nothing fancy, just honest Italian food made with love. Watching you reminded me of her, that dedication, that fire. He reached up, and I thought he might touch my face. But his hand stopped just short. And I realized that punishing you for your father's sins would make me exactly what my mother died trying to escape. A man who hurts innocents to settle scores. I didn't know whether to believe him. Every instinct screamed that this was manipulation, another layer of a game I didn't understand. But there was something raw in his voice, something broken that matched the broken parts of me. What do you want from me, Dante? I asked. Really? I want you to cook. His hand finally moved, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising gentleness. I want you to take this restaurant and make it everything my mother dreamed of. I want to see food that makes people remember what it's like to feel something. And maybe... He paused, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. Maybe I want to prove to myself that not everything my family touches turns to ash. His touch sent electricity down my spine. This was wrong. Dangerous. He was a mobster. His family was responsible for unspeakable things. My father was somehow involved in his mother's death. Nothing good could come from this. But when he looked at me like that, like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking for 15 years, I couldn't walk away. I'll cook for you, I said. I'll make this restaurant everything you want it to be. But I need the truth, Dante. All of it. What really happened that night. What my father did. What your father did. If we're going to do this, no more secrets. He smiled. Not the predatory smile from before, but something almost sad. Some secrets aren't mine to tell, but I'll give you what I can. Deal? Deal. He stepped back, the moment breaking like a soap bubble. Good. Your sous chef arrives in an hour. Your pastry chef this afternoon. We have 3 months to build a menu, train a staff, and create something worthy of the Benedetti name. The name my mother would have wanted it to represent. Not what my father made it. What was the restaurant called? I asked. Your mother's restaurant? Mama's Table. His voice softened. She sold it when she married my father. He said it wasn't appropriate for a Benedetti wife to work. She never cooked professionally again. An idea crystallized in my mind. That's what we call this place. Not some pretentious Italian name that tourists can't pronounce. Mama's Table. A tribute to her. Dante stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded once, sharply, like he didn't trust himself to speak. Mama's Table it is. The next 3 months were a blur of 16-hour days, culinary experimentation, and slowly unraveling the truth about that night 15 years ago. Dante kept his promise. He gave me information in pieces, like a puzzle I had to assemble myself. I learned that my father had been coerced into working for Carlo Benedetti, threatened with harm to me and my mother if he didn't cooperate. I learned that Sarah's death wasn't as simple as a gun going off. There were questions about who had actually pulled the trigger, whether it was Carlo's men or friendly fire in the chaos. I learned that my father had taken money, yes, but only enough to pay for my mother's funeral, and to disappear before Carlo decided to tie up loose ends. I also learned about Dante. How he'd spent the last 15 years becoming exactly what his mother had feared. His father's weapon, sharp and merciless. How he'd earned that scar above his eyebrow in a fight that left 2 men dead, and Dante with nightmares he'd never admit to having. How he came to the restaurant construction site late at night when he thought no one was watching, and traced the tile patterns we'd chosen for the floor, whispering things in Italian that I couldn't quite hear. And I learned something else. Dante Benedetti was watching me with the same intensity he'd had that first night, but now it wasn't just observation. It was hunger. The restaurant opened on Valentine's Day, poetic and probably disastrous from a business standpoint, but Dante insisted. My mother loved Valentine's Day, he'd said. She believed in romance, even after everything. The first month was chaos. We had reservations booked solid for 3 months straight, mostly because of the Benedetti name, but word spread about the food. Real critics came, not just bloggers looking for free meals. And they raved. Chef Chen has created something extraordinary, wrote the Globe's food critic. This isn't your grandmother's Italian food. It's your great-grandmother's, if your great-grandmother had trained at Le Bernardin and had access to the finest ingredients money can buy. Each dish tells a story, and together they sing an aria of flavor and technique. I framed that review and hung it in my tiny office, the first recognition of my name in print, ever. But success came with complications. Dante was always there, watching from his table near the kitchen window. He never ate in the dining room proper, always at that one table where he could see me work, where our eyes could meet through the pass-through window. His presence was both reassuring and unnerving. And then there was the touching. It started innocently enough. His hand on my lower back as he guided me through the crowded dining room, his fingers brushing mine when he handed me a wineglass to taste. The way he stood just slightly too close when we discussed menu changes, his breath warm on my neck. I told myself it meant nothing. I was an employee. He was my boss. He was also a mobster investigating my father's role in his mother's death. Nothing about our situation suggested romance. But late at night, when the restaurant was closed and the staff had gone home, we'd sit in the empty dining room and talk. Really talk. He told me about his mother's recipes, and I'd recreate them from his descriptions, trying to capture memories from 15 years ago. I told him about culinary school, about my mother's death, about the years of invisibility that had slowly erased me. "You're not invisible anymore," he said one night in early April, after we'd been open for 2 months. We were alone in the restaurant, tasting a new pasta dish I'd developed, pappardelle with braised short rib and red wine reduction. "Thanks to you," I said, twirling pasta onto a fork. "You made me visible." "No." His eyes locked onto mine with that intense focus that made my pulse race. "I just gave you a stage. You made yourself impossible to ignore." He reached across the table, thumb brushing a spot of sauce from the corner of my mouth. The gesture was intimate, deliberate. His thumb lingered for a moment before moving to my lower lip, tracing it slowly. "Dante," I whispered, "we can't." "Can't what?" His voice was rough, low. "This, whatever this is. You're my boss. You're investigating my father. Your family is... My family doesn't dictate who I want." He stood, moving around the table to where I sat. "And I want you, Natalie. I've wanted you since that first night, when you looked at me through that kitchen window, like you could see straight through all my bullshit." He was right there, standing over me, and I should have stood up, created distance. Instead, I tilted my head back to meet his eyes. "This is a terrible idea," I said. "The best ones usually are." When he kissed me, it wasn't gentle. It was possession and hunger, and 15 years of grief transmuted into desperate need. I kissed him back with equal ferocity, 3 years of invisibility exploding into this moment where I was the entire focus of someone's world. His hands tangled in my hair. Mine fisted in his shirt. Always that black button down with the top buttons undone. Always that gold chain catching the light. He lifted me onto the table, pasta forgotten, his body pressing between my legs. "Tell me to stop," he growled against my mouth. "Tell me this is wrong." "It is wrong," I gasped. "It's so wrong." But I didn't tell him to stop. Neither of us stopped until much later, in his apartment overlooking the harbor, where he made love to me like I was the answer to every question he'd been asking since he was 17 years old. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets that probably cost more than my car, I should have felt guilty, conflicted. Instead, I felt awake for the first time in years. "My father will lose his mind," Dante said quietly, fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. "If he finds out about us." "Why?" "Because you're Marcus Chen's daughter, because it complicates his carefully controlled world, because he'll see it as weakness." He turned to look at me, propped on one elbow. "I don't care what he thinks, but I need you to understand what you're walking into. My family isn't normal. My life isn't normal. There are things I can't protect you from if you stay with me." "Who says I'm staying with you?" I teased. Maybe this was just one night. His expression darkened possessively. It's not one night. We both know it's not one night. He was right. It wasn't. The next 3 months fell into a pattern. Days at the restaurant where we were consummate professionals, though the staff definitely suspected something. Nights together, where he unraveled me completely, where I learned that Dante Benedetti had a soft side he showed no one else, where he whispered Italian endearments and held me like I might disappear if he loosened his grip. But shadows were gathering. Carlo Benedetti had started asking questions about the restaurant, about me. Dante's younger brother, Marco, had made comments about how much time Dante spent at Mama's table, and my father's condition was deteriorating. The stress of everything had triggered another stroke, leaving him almost entirely nonverbal. I need to talk to him, I told Dante one night in July. We were at his place again, in that massive bed that felt like an island where the rest of the world couldn't touch us. Before he can't talk at all, I need to hear the truth about what happened. Dante was quiet for a long time. Are you sure you want to know? I need to know. You've given me pieces, but I need to hear it from him. Okay. He pulled me closer. I'll take you to see him. But Natalie, after you hear what he has to say, things might change between us. You need to be prepared for that. I wasn't prepared. Nothing could have prepared me for what my father told me. We went to the care facility on a Sunday, when the restaurant was closed. My father was in his room, staring out the window at a view of the parking lot. When he saw Dante with me, his eyes went wide with terror. It's okay, Dad, I said, taking his hand. Dante isn't here to hurt you. We just need to talk about what happened. About Sarah Benedetti. My father's good hand gripped mine with surprising strength. His speech was slurred, difficult to understand, but I caught the words. I'm sorry. So sorry. Didn't know. Didn't know what? I asked gently. Tears streamed down his face. Didn't know. Was trap. Carlo. Set up. Told me. Protect Sarah. Then. His men. I tried. Stop them. Got shot. He pulled up his shirt with his working hand, showing an old scar on his side. Couldn't. Save her. I failed. The room spun. I looked at Dante. His face was stone, but his hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. You're saying my father set it up? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. He planned for my mother to die? My father nodded, more tears falling. Couldn't. Prove. Paid me. Shut up. Threatened. Natalie. Her mother. If I talked, they'd die too. Why? I demanded. Why would Carlo kill his own wife? She knew. Too much. Going to. FBI. Had evidence. Of everything. Carlo couldn't. Let her leave. Dante stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His shoulders were rigid, trembling with suppressed rage. I'd never seen him like this, on the edge of losing control completely. Dante, I said softly. My father tried to save her. He didn't betray you. He took money to keep quiet while my father walked free. Dante's voice was cold, empty. He let me spend 15 years thinking it was an accident, that no one was to blame. He could have told the truth. He could have helped me get justice. He was scared. He was protecting his family. So was my mother. Dante spun to face us, and I finally saw it. The rage he'd been holding back for months, maybe years. She was trying to protect me, and your father let her die. That's not fair, I said, standing to face him. He was one man against your father's entire organization. What was he supposed to do? He was supposed to die trying. Dante's shout echoed in the small room. He was supposed to do what he was paid to do, protect her. Instead, he took blood money and ran. Stop it! I moved between Dante and my father, who was sobbing silently in his wheelchair. You're scaring him. You're scaring me. Dante looked at me like he'd never seen me before. The man who'd held me tenderly last night, who'd whispered that I was beautiful, who'd traced my scars, both the physical and emotional ones, was gone. In his place stood a Benedetti enforcer, cold and merciless. Get away from him, Natalie. No. I stood my ground. You want to be angry? Fine. Be angry at your father. Be angry at the system that let him get away with murder. But my father was a victim too. Can't you see that? All I see, he said slowly, each word dropping like ice, is the man who stood by while my mother bled out on a warehouse floor. The man who chose his own survival over hers. The man whose daughter I've been sleeping with for months. The accusation in his tone made me flinch. Don't do that. Don't make what we have into something ugly because you're hurt. What we have? He laughed, bitter and sharp. What do we have, Natalie? A restaurant built on lies? A relationship founded on me investigating your father? How do I know you didn't sleep with me just to protect him? The words hit like a slap. You bastard. You know that's not true. You pursued me. You orchestrated all of this. If anyone was using sex as a weapon, it was you. Silence fell between us, thick and suffocating. My father made a small sound of distress. Dante's expression shifted, hurt flickering across his face before the mask slammed back down. You're right. This was all me. I brought you into my world, made you dependent on me, and then fell for you like an idiot. That's on me. Dante, I need space. He was already moving toward the door. I need to think. Stay away from me for a while, Natalie. Don't come to the restaurant. Don't call. Just stay away. You can't just leave. Watch me. He walked out. Just walked out of the care facility. Out of my father's room. Maybe out of my life entirely. I heard his car start in the parking lot, the engine roaring as he peeled away. I sank into the chair next to my father's wheelchair, shaking. He reached for my hand with his good one, squeezing weakly. Sorry, he mumbled. So sorry. It's not your fault, Dad. I wiped my tears with my free hand. None of this is your fault. But as I sat there, I wondered if that was true. Maybe we were all complicit. My father, me, Dante, Sarah, Carlo. Maybe tragedy didn't have villains, just people making impossible choices with incomplete information. Or maybe that was just what I told myself to sleep at night. I stayed away from Mama's table for a week. My sous chef called, confused about my absence. I made excuses about family emergency, food poisoning, anything to avoid explaining that I'd had my heart shattered by the man who'd made me visible. On the 8th day, Dante showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find him looking like he hadn't slept since I'd last seen him. Stubble shadowed his jaw. His hair was disheveled. His shirt, still that black button-down, was wrinkled, like he'd slept in it. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I should have slammed the door in his face. Instead, I stepped aside. He walked into my tiny studio, looking around like he'd never seen it before. He'd actually never been here. We always went to his place, his world. Having him in mine felt invasive, exposing. I was wrong, he said, turning to face me. What I said at the care facility, all of it. I was angry and scared and I took it out on you. That's not okay. No, I agreed. It's not. I've spent the last week thinking about what your father said. About what my father did. About all of it. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up more. I've known for years that my father was capable of terrible things, but knowing he orchestrated my mother's death, that he planned it, executed it, and then lived with it for 15 years. I can't... His voice cracked. I took a step toward him, instinct overriding anger. Dante, I don't know who I am anymore. The admission came out broken. I spent 15 years becoming my father's weapon. I did things, terrible things, because I thought I was serving the family, honoring my mother's memory by being strong. But I was serving the man who killed her. Every time I enforced his orders, collected his debts, eliminated his problems, I was serving her murderer. "What are you going to do?" I asked. His eyes met mine, dark and haunted. "I'm going to take him down. My father, the organization, all of it. I'm going to burn it to the ground." "That's suicide," I whispered. "You can't take on your entire family alone." "I don't plan to be alone." He took a step closer. "I've been talking to the FBI. They've wanted to flip someone from inside the Benedetti family for years. I can give them everything: records, testimony, evidence that will put my father away for life along with half his organization." "They'll kill you," I said flatly. "When they find out you're cooperating, they'll kill you." "Probably." He said it so casually, like his death was just another item on a to-do list. "But it's what my mother wanted. She was gathering evidence to give to the FBI before my father found out. This is me finishing what she started." "And what about me?" The question came out smaller than I intended. "What about us? What about the restaurant?" "The restaurant is yours." He reached into his jacket, pulling out folded papers. "I've transferred full ownership to you. The building, the business, everything. When I go into witness protection, if I survive that long, Mama's table will be your legacy, not mine." I stared at the papers. "I don't want the restaurant. I want you alive. You can't have both." His smile was sad. "This is the price, Natalie. I get justice for my mother, and you get the life you deserve. Clean, legitimate, with no ties to my family's darkness. What if I don't want clean?" I moved closer, close enough to touch. "What if I want you, darkness and all?" "Don't." He caught my wrist when I reached for him. "Don't make this harder. I'm trying to do the right thing for once in my miserable life." "The right thing is staying alive," I was shouting now, tears streaming down my face. "The right thing is letting the FBI build their case without using you as bait. The right thing is not throwing your life away for revenge." "It's not revenge," he said quietly. "It's justice. There's a difference. Not to me. Not if you're dead." He pulled me close suddenly, crushing me against his chest. I could feel his heart racing, feel the tremor in his arms as he held me. "I love you," he whispered into my hair. I never said it before because I was scared. But I love you, Natalie Chen. You're the best thing that's happened to me since I was 17 years old. And because I love you, I need you to be safe. I need you to be free of my family's poison, even if that means losing you. I pulled back just enough to look at his face. "You idiot. I love you too, which is why I'm not letting you do this alone." "Natalie, I'm testifying too." The decision crystallized as I said it. "My father's testimony corroborates yours. I'll get him to give a statement to the FBI. Between the two of you, they'll have enough to—" "No." His grip tightened. "Absolutely not. I won't put you in danger. Too late. I'm already in danger just by being with you. But together we're stronger. We can do this, Dante. We can finish what your mother started and actually survive it." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he kissed me, desperate, fierce, full of fear and love and a future that suddenly seemed possible. "Together," he whispered against my lips. "But if anything happens to you—" "It won't." I tried to sound confident. "We'll be careful, we'll be smart, and we'll bring your father down." It took 3 months to build the case. 3 months of secret meetings with FBI agents. 3 months of gathering evidence from my father's scattered memories and Dante's intimate knowledge of his family's operations. 3 months of living in fear that Carlo would discover what we were doing. During those months, Mama's table became a sanctuary. We worked side by side in the kitchen, creating dishes that told stories. My mother's recipes merged with his mother's, a fusion of cultures and memories that made people cry with joy. The restaurant thrived even as the world around us grew increasingly dangerous. Carlo started asking more questions. He showed up at the restaurant unannounced, watching us with those cold eyes that had probably sentenced dozens of people to death. He knew something was happening. He just couldn't figure out what. The night before we were scheduled to testify before the grand jury, Dante took me to the original Mama's Table, the tiny restaurant in the North End that his mother had owned decades ago. It was a dental office now, but the building still stood. We stood outside in the November cold, looking up at windows that had once glowed warm with cooking and laughter. "She would have liked you," Dante said. "My mother. She would have seen what I see. Your passion, your kindness, your strength. I wish I could have met her," I replied. "I wish none of this had happened. But then we wouldn't have found each other." He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. "Is that terrible? That I'm grateful for the tragedy because it led me to you?" "No," I said. "It's human." We stood there for a long time, two people shaped by violence and loss, holding on to each other against the cold. The next morning, everything exploded. We were on our way to the federal building when Dante's phone rang. He looked at the screen, face going pale. "It's Marco, my brother." "Don't answer it," I urged. "It could be a trap." But he answered anyway, putting it on speaker. Marco's voice came through, high and panicked. "Dante, where are you? Papa knows. He knows about the FBI. He knows about everything. He's coming for you. He's coming for both of you." The line went dead. Dante's foot slammed on the accelerator. "We need to get to the federal building now. Once we're inside, we're safe. The FBI can protect us." But we never made it. 3 blocks from our destination, black SUVs materialized from side streets, boxing us in. Dante swore, looking for an escape route. There wasn't one. Men emerged from the vehicles. Carlo's enforcers, men I'd seen at the restaurant, men whose eyes held nothing but cold professionalism. They weren't here to talk. "Stay in the car," Dante ordered. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but FBI." "What are you—" But he was already out, walking toward his father's men with his hands visible, trying to negotiate. I watched through the windshield, heart pounding, as he spoke to them. One of the enforcers shook his head. Another reached for his jacket. I saw it happening in slow motion, the gun coming out, Dante's hand moving to his own weapon. The first shot. But it didn't come from the enforcer. It came from above, from one of the buildings. FBI snipers, covering us just in case. Chaos erupted. More shots. Dante diving for cover. The enforcers scattering. And through it all, I saw him. Carlo Benedetti himself, emerging from one of the SUVs, a gun in his hand, aimed directly at me through the windshield. Our eyes met. In his face, I saw everything Dante could have become. Cold, ruthless, empty. And I understood in that moment why Sarah had been willing to risk everything to save her son from this life. The gunshot shattered the windshield, but I felt nothing. I looked down, expecting to see blood. There was none. Dante had thrown himself in front of the car at the last second, taking the bullet meant for me. He fell. Everything else, the FBI agents swarming in, Carlo being dragged away screaming, the sirens and shouting, all faded away. There was only Dante, lying on the pavement, blood spreading across that black shirt I'd unbuttoned so many times. I was out of the car, on the ground beside him, pressing my hands to the wound in his chest. No, 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 no. Stay with me, Dante, stay with me. His eyes found mine. Natalie, don't you dare. Tears blurred my vision. Don't you dare die on me. We have a restaurant to run. We have a life to live. You don't get to leave me now." He smiled weakly. "Bossy. Even now." Damn right. The ambulance was pulling up. Paramedics were pushing me aside. "I love you. Do you hear me? I love you, you stupid, self-sacrificing idiot. Love you too." His eyes were closing. "Make sure. The gnocchi recipe. Use the good flour." Then he was gone, loaded into the ambulance, sirens wailing as they rushed him to the hospital. I sat on the pavement in a puddle of his blood and mine. I'd been hit by broken glass from the windshield but barely noticed, and watched the ambulance disappear. An FBI agent tried to help me up. I shook her off. "He's going to die," I said numbly. "Just like his mother. He's a fighter," the agent said gently. "And we got Carlo. It's over. You're both safe now." But I didn't feel safe. I felt hollowed out, a shell of a person waiting to hear whether the man I loved would survive. The next 6 hours were the longest of my life. I sat in the hospital waiting room, still covered in blood, refusing to be treated until someone gave me news about Dante. My father was brought in. The FBI had picked him up for protection. He sat beside me in his wheelchair, his good hand holding mine, both of us waiting. Finally, a surgeon emerged. "Ms. Chen? Mr. Benedetti is out of surgery. The bullet missed his heart by 2 centimeters. He's critical but stable. He's asking for you." I ran, literally ran through those hospital corridors, following a nurse to the ICU. Dante looked tiny in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines and tubes, but his eyes were open. "Hey," he whispered when he saw me. "Hey yourself." I took his hand carefully, mindful of the IV. "You scared me. Sorry." He managed a weak smile. "Wanted to be. Dramatic. Mission accomplished, you idiot." I was crying again, tears dripping onto our joined hands. "Don't ever do that again." "Can't promise that." His thumb stroked my knuckles. "You're kind of worth dying for." "No." I leaned down, pressing my forehead to his. "I'm worth living for. So you're going to survive this, and we're going to testify, and we're going to put your father away. Then we're going to go back to our restaurant and cook until we're old and gray. Understand?" "Bossy," he repeated, but he squeezed my hand. "Okay, deal." Carlo Benedetti was arrested that day. The FBI had enough evidence from Dante's testimony and my father's statement to charge him with racketeering, murder, conspiracy, and about 20 other crimes. He would die in prison, a fitting end for a man who'd built an empire on death. Dante's recovery took months. Physical therapy, surgeries, painful rehabilitation. I was there for all of it, running the restaurant during the day and sleeping in a chair by his hospital bed at night. My sous chef stepped up beautifully, keeping Mama's table running smoothly even as our world fell apart. When Dante was finally released, 6 months after the shooting, we stood together outside the restaurant. It was late spring, the kind of evening when Boston pretends it knows what warm weather is. The harbor glittered with reflected city lights. "Ready?" I asked, holding the door open. "With you?" He took my hand, still moving carefully but getting stronger every day. "Always." We walked into Mama's table together. The staff had stayed late, preparing a special dinner. All of Sarah's recipes, recreated from Dante's memories and my interpretation. My father was there too, in his wheelchair at the best table, beaming at us with his lopsided smile. "To new beginnings," I said, raising a glass of wine. "To finishing what our mothers started," Dante countered, clinking his glass against mine. We ate. We laughed. And for the first time since I'd met Dante Benedetti, I felt truly safe. Not because the danger was gone. His family still had enemies, and my testimony had made me a target too. But because we'd chosen each other, deliberately and completely, with full knowledge of the cost. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was seen, loved, cherished by a man who'd literally taken a bullet for me. And he was seen by me, not as a mobster or a Benedetti or his father's weapon, but as Dante, the man who whispered Italian endearments in the dark and cried when I made his mother's carbonara exactly right. Later that night, alone in his apartment, our apartment now, since I'd moved in during his recovery, he pulled me close. "Marry me," he said, not a question. A statement of fact, of intent. "Is that a proposal or an order?" I teased. "Both." His hands framed my face. "I'm not good at this. I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm good at loving you. So marry me, Natalie. Build a life with me. Grow old in that restaurant with me." "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "But I get to design the menu for the wedding." He laughed, the sound filling the room like sunlight. "Deal." We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at Mama's table, surrounded by staff who'd become family, and my father who smiled through happy tears. Dante wore a tuxedo, the first time I'd seen him in anything but that black button-down and jeans. I wore my mother's wedding dress, altered to fit me. As we said our vows, I thought about Sarah Benedetti, who'd died trying to save her son from darkness. And I thought about my mother, who'd loved my father despite his flaws and mistakes. Both women were gone, but their love lived on. In the restaurant that bore Sarah's name, in the recipes we cooked together, in the life Dante and I were building from the ruins of their tragedies. "I love you," Dante whispered as we kissed, sealing promises made in front of everyone who mattered. "I love you too," I whispered back, "now and always." We walked out of Mama's table that night as husband and wife, partners in every sense. The restaurant glowed behind us, full of laughter and good food and people who'd come together despite impossible odds. It wasn't the life either of us had planned. It wasn't safe or simple or uncomplicated. But it was ours. And that made it perfect.